What's up everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Market This Week. I'm your host Hasib Khan and you are watching the weekly watch list. This is the list of stocks that we'll be going over today. I'll be covering some of fundamentals, technicals, and the setup that I'm looking for in the coming week. So let's get the show started. First up is QCOM. Along the bottom over here, you can see that it has been surpassing its earnings quarter over quarter. It also pays out a generous dividend every quarter. QCOM is showing a relative strength of 6.69 and a UD ratio of 1.84. Now, a UD ratio basically is a study of the volume over the past 50 days and tells you if the stock is under accumulation or distribution. Anything above 1 is considered that the stock is under accumulation, meaning people are buying it more and more. So a UD ratio of 1.84 is really good. Looking at the price over here, it did create this base about over a year or so. It broke out with higher than expected volume and retested it as support before moving higher. It did start to create this base after that breakout, and this can be considered a base on base pattern. Now on Tuesday, if you follow me on TradingView, I also posted this setup where this printed a pocket pivot entry and mentioned that it may pull back to the 183.04 area. It used this area, 183.04, as a level of support on Friday before moving higher. Now what I'm looking for in the coming week is some consolidation along this level, maybe a quick dip underneath, move back higher, and then continue its move to the upside. Next up is Onto. You can see along the bottom over here that it has been doing very well regarding its earnings, surpassing it quarter over quarter. ONTO is showing a relative strength of 6.11 in the technology semiconductor space with a UD ratio of 1.13, meaning it is under accumulation. Now we see that it did start creating this base because of the recent market volatility. It did have this pullback and now is recovering from the pullback with higher than average volume and also breaking out of this base. What I'm looking for in the coming week is a pullback to the 103.77 area, consolidate over here over a few days before its next move higher. However, if this level of support does fail, I am expecting the 101.26 area to hold as support, maybe a larger consolidation before its next move higher. Next up is LRCX. Along the bottom, you can see that it has been doing very well quarter over quarter and surpassing its earnings expectations. It does also pay out a generous dividend quarter over quarter. LRCX has a relative strength of 4.16 and a UD ratio of 1.68, meaning this too is under accumulation. You can see that it did create this base over here, broke out, retested it as support, created this other base, and broke out recently of that. What I'm looking for in the coming week is a consolidation, and it make me use the 710.27 area as a level of support for a few days before eventually making a move higher. Next up is TSM. You can see that again, quarter over quarter, it has been surpassing its earnings expectation. A miss over here, but that's okay. It also does pay out a quarterly dividend, and just a quarter ago, it did increase its dividend. You can see this year-long base over here in the price. It did try to break out just recently, but failed on its earnings report, and now is trying to break out once again. Given the current market conditions, I am expecting to see another pullback down to this area over here, 136.25-ish. Use this as a level of support maybe for a few days before actually breaking out, using this as a level of support and making new highs. Next up, EMN. Same thing. You can see along the bottom over here, it has been doing pretty well quarter over quarter, year over year, surpassing its earnings expectations, and it does also pay out a dividend. It did have a couple of misses here and there, but overall, it's okay. EMN is showing a relative strength of 3.13 with a UD ratio of 1.52, which means this is under accumulation. Looking at the long-term chart, it did break out of this base over here, used this as a level of support before moving higher. It did have a larger pullback, but again, used the 98.13 level as a level of support before making another move higher. How I think this may play out in the coming weeks, I do expect either this level, the 126.59, to hold as support, have a nice consolidation over here for a few days again before making a move higher. However, if we do see a larger pullback, I do expect the 123.21 area to hold as a level of support. This would mean a larger consolidation in height before finally breaking up, retesting it as support, and making its next move higher. Next up is BXP. Again, same thing. Earnings are on spot, surpassing its expectations. We did have a slight miss over here, but that's okay. And it also does pay out a pretty generous dividend quarter over quarter. BXP is showing a relative strength of 1.65 and a UD ratio of 1.03. So it is under accumulation at the moment. Looking at its all-time chart, you can see that this level of resistance is pretty strong, and we did break above it earlier. This is a monthly chart. We broke above it, used it as support for 3 months, broke back below, and has been resistant since. And you can see that we failed to close above it again just this month. Now, how this may play out in the coming weeks, I would expect this resistance level to hold and see some selling pressure over here. We might come down to the 122.52 area along over here, use this as a level of support, consolidate before eventually breaking above. Now, this will be a hard level of resistance to break above since it is a long-term resistance point. But if we do break above, I would expect it to hold as support before making its move to the all-time highs. You can look for an entry maybe around here with an expectation of it attempting to break out of this resistance area of 126.09, or you can wait for a break above, retest, and enter on the 126.09 area before making its move to the all-time highs. Next up is CCK. Again, along the bottom, you can see that it has been surpassing its earnings expectations quarter over quarter, also pays out a generous dividend. It did start building out this base over here and is making higher lows, first of all, and it did break above this resistance area between 111.04 and 111.71. This candle on Friday shows that there's tons of buying demand along this level of support, since this wick demonstrates that the price did want to come down, but buyers saw a lot of demand and pushed the price higher. How I think the price may play out in the coming weeks, again, is I would like to see some consolidation over here, maybe for a few days before making a run at all-time highs, break through, retest it as support before making new all-time highs. However, if it does break below, I would expect this 109.98 area or 110 area to serve as support before making new highs. Next up is ST. Same thing. Along the bottom over here, you can see that it has been surpassing its quarterly earnings every quarter, except for a miss over here. Looking at the long-term chart, you can see that it did recently break above its previous all-time highs, used it as support for several months before making higher moves. How I think the price may play out is that we may see some consolidation along this area over here before breaking out, retesting it as support. Now this area over here between 64.80 and 65.40 can serve as a level of resistance, right? You can see this high over here, these highs over here. So I would expect it to serve as a level of resistance, maybe a consolidation over here before breaking above that level, retesting it as a level of support, and eventually moving higher. Next up is ROIC. Again, along the bottom, you can see that it has been surpassing its earnings expectations quarter over quarter over the recent quarters, but did have a few misses earlier. If you look at the all-time chart, you can see that we just recently broke above its all-time highs and are retesting it as a level of support. It didn't quite retest it to the point, but we can expect it to come down to the 19.09 area. How I think the price may play out is that we may actually see a pullback to the 19.09 area, see it as a full retest, or maybe even a break below just to see like around the 18.93 area. Use this as a level of support before making higher moves. Now this will serve as a level of resistance around here, 19.93. So I do think we won't see like an exact run up, but something along that line, where this area is broken and retested as support. This area serves as resistance, retest as support, and move on. Next up is NOC, and again, you can see along the bottom over here, quarter over quarter, its earnings have been surpassing its expectations, and it does also pay out a very generous dividend. Looking at the all-time chart, you can see that it's a very clear uptrend, and we just recently broke above the all-time highs from 2020. We had this tight consolidation for a few months before breaking above its all-time highs and proceeding higher. Taking a look at the daily chart, this is what it looks like. Along its all-time highs, it did retest and move higher. How I think the price may play out in the coming days is that we may see a slight rejection from around this area, pull back to around 397.62, consolidate here for a bit before eventually breaking out, retesting it as support, and moving higher. And last up, we have CE. Again, along the bottom, it has been surpassing its earnings expectations quarter over quarter, also pays out a dividend. You can see that it was creating a base over here for quite some time, using 168.74 as a level of resistance before it broke above, retested it as support over here, and continued higher. Now Friday's close did close above the 173.22 area. I do think we may see some consolidation over here before making another move higher. However, if we do fail to hold this level as support in the coming week, I do think we will see it move lower to around the 170.12 area. Use this as a level of support before actually breaking higher, retesting it as support, and making its next move higher. Well, that's all for this week. Let me know in the comments down below what stocks you're keeping an eye on for the coming week. If you want quick setups similar to the ones that I discussed in this video, be sure to check out the video in the card right here, and I'll see you all next time. Till then, see you later.